From the Homestead Studios in Santa Clarita, California, it's Just the Tip-Sters with Melissa Morgan. Today with special guest, spiritual guide, and psychic detective, Pam Coronado. Remember, if you've got a tip on anything, a mystery of any kind, a theory on an open case, the truth behind this lousy season of the X-Files, anything, tell us about it by sending an email to jttipsters@gmail.com. You just might hear Melissa talk about your tip on the podcast. And now, here's your host, retired vice chair of the Hannibal Lecter Wine and Legumes Supper Club, Melissa Morgan.
More cowbell. So, producer Mark, I don't want to start off on a bad note where I'm correcting you, but it's pronounced legumes. I just want you to know
I actually
that.
looked it up, and you can pronounce it either way.
No, you can't. No, you can't. It's legumes.
I'll show you afterwards.
Don't call it legumes. You're going to get laughed out of the Hannibal Lecter Wine and Legume Society or whatever you said.
Supper Club.
Supper Club. It's legumes.
All right.
All right. Thank you. I wanted to get that out. I don't want to do a corrections show because of your pronunciation of legumes. Legumes. Are you from Kentucky?
No.
Right. Okay.
But I'm not from Detroit either.
Oh, he got me. He got me. That was one of my words when I moved here where people knew I was from Kentucky. The words were umbrella, Detroit, and cement, as opposed to cement, Detroit, and umbrella. It's just a lengthening of the words. Anyway, so we are really blessed today on the Just the Tipsters podcast to have a really special guest, someone I have adored for a long time, Pam Coronado. I saw her on a television show in the late 2000s, flipping around, always been fascinated by psychics and murder. Those two things go together really well. And saw her on a show called Sensing Murder and was like, this woman's incredible. Amazing. And then I found out she lived in California, and I tried hard to not to stalk her, but my stalking abilities are really like dismal. But looking around online, found that she offered classes and loved her classes, still love her classes, and love and respect her work. And we are really blessed to have her as a guest. So grateful that you're here. Thank you for being here, Pam.
Thank you.
You're the best. So I never know exactly how to launch into this, but I'm just going to say, I think people have psychic abilities and they've had them their whole life. And I think you think that too, but you didn't really feel like you came into yours until the mid 90s. Is that about right?
That's right. It was 96.
96. Mm-hmm. And it was a case involving someone you had gone to school with who lives in your area in Ventura County. Mm-hmm. And she went missing and you had a dream. And at this point, you're married with 3 kids at this point?
That's right.
Yeah. And you have this dream, and I feel like you did the smartest thing anyone could ever do. You didn't just like call up the police and say, I'm really smart and I know where she is and I had a dream and here's how it goes. You volunteered for the search. Mm-hmm. So tell me how that happened. What pushed you to do this and help find her?
Well, mostly I was super embarrassed.
to have a natural ability?
To have had dreams that I didn't want to go down there and make people think I was crazy. Right. But I saw on the news, I was obsessively following the case after I realized that I dreamed about her.
Of course.
And I saw the grandmother and the mother on the news one day, and they were crying. And they said, if anybody's got any information that can help with this case, please come forward. Whatever it is, we don't care. Just somebody please come forward.
Wow.
And that was it for me. I was like, I can't let my pride get in the way of doing the right thing.
It's like they were talking to you directly.
Right.
To you.
It felt like that.
Yeah, I bet.
I felt so guilty. So I just went down there and decided, well, I'll just volunteer to search with the search crews. And if I find somebody who's interested in what I have to say, then, I'll share what I'm thinking. So that's kind of how I approached it.
And in the meantime, you're tromping around in the woods and
Looking
in the
for
gullies.
a body. Yeah. Which I did not want to find.
Of course not.
I was praying not to find a body.
Right.
Which is a little...
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Gosh, I hope I don't find her, but I know right where she is.
Yeah, it's not helpful. I've gotten past that.
Right,
I've gotten past that.
That's good.
Yeah.
Well, I think it was the first time, and it was someone you knew. Those things combined would make me not want to find someone too, even though you're doing the best you can, which is to help find her.
Yeah.
So I find the story about the way it was handled. I'm not saying it was mishandled, but the fact that you even came into the realm of the person who ended up being her murderer, that had to be overwhelming and frightening, because here you are doing, something that so many of us wish we could do, which is help find someone who's missing, bring some closure to, if there is such thing as closure, to families, and to find her so she's got a resting place and not laying out for, scavengers.
Yeah.
So tell that story. I love that story.
Yeah, that was my introduction to psychic detective work. So I had talked to the guy who was leading the search party. Turned out to be somebody I'd gone to high school with as well.
Wow.
Which turned out to actually be a good thing, because I could talk to him and he knew I wasn't crazy.
Right. He remembered you from gym class.
He remembered me from school.
Yeah.
And ironically, we had gone to church together, and which made it kind of awkward.
Interesting.
So at least he knew I wasn't, crazy.
Right.
But he introduced me to the detective.
Okay.
And then it was the detective, two of them, that decided to take me to the house, her house,
Okay.
to get me some items to hold to do psychometry.
Okay.
Which was hilarious, because I had never done psychometry
Okay.
before. It's just I'd seen people do it on
Right.
TV, and the detectives thought that's something I should do. So
That's fascinating.
so I went to the house.
They know more about psychics than you do.
And I kept telling them I don't know how to do this, because I just had a dream.
Right.
I'm not a trained psychic or anything. I just had a dream about her. And so they insisted I go with them to the house, and they were going to get me, I don't know what they were going to give me, something from personal of hers. And as we were walking up the drive, out came the husband. And of course, I knew from my dream that he was the guy responsible for
Right.
killing her. So I'm sure all the color drained out of my face, and it looked like all the color drained out of his face. And we were staring at each other, and
he recognized.
and he did, well, what he said is he recognized
You're
me.
that psychic, aren't you?
Yeah, how did he know? He
Was there
said,
something in the paper?
no, not until after.
Oh, I remember. I think you said
After.
one of the police officers told him, we've got a psychic working on this too.
It might be, because
Like,
he said,
basically,
you must
we're gonna,
be
your
the
ass
psychic.
is going to get, yeah,
Yeah.
we're going to get your ass. Yeah.
Yeah, he said, you must be the psychic. So, so at that point, I was like a cartoon character. You know how they like run away in their head? I was running away in my head, but I was standing there just staring
Frozen.
at him,
Uh-huh.
frozen. And the detective leaned in. He said, you don't have to be afraid. I have a gun.
Oh, God.
And I was thinking,
Thanks, buddy.
oh, I feel so much better.
Yeah. Like there's a struggle for the gun and the woman trying to help. Yeah, that's awesome.
So he was as creepy as you can imagine, and we ended up going in the house. And don't ever let a detective in your house, because they just start walking around and snooping in your
Of
stuff.
course.
And so the detective's walking around snooping into stuff, and I'm standing there with the creepster
Awesome.
and thinking, what's happening right
Uh-huh.
now? And he tried to get me to go in the bedroom with him to get something that belonged to his wife. Well, no,
Right.
we're not going to do that.
Right.
So I tell him, I'll wait right here with the detective.
Uh-huh.
And so he went on. He disappeared into the bedroom for some time. I don't know what he was doing in there. And he came back out with I'll never forget this. He came back out. He obviously knew more about psychometry than I did at that point.
Wow.
He came out with a brand new glass crystal picture frame. Then he had you could tell he'd hastily shoved a picture of her in there.
Oh my God.
And it was the same picture from all of her missing persons posters.
Okay.
So it wasn't even like a Polaroid of her or
Right.
anything personal. And the price tag was still on the back of this thing. And I don't know, crystal is not a good thing for psychometry.
Okay. Interesting.
So the whole thing, and of course the picture was meaningless. It was just, he probably just cut it out or something and
Right.
shoved it in there.
Trying to look like he had pictures of her.
And trying to look like he was being
Good
cooperative.
husband.
Yeah.
And then what did he say to you?
and then he leaned close to me thinking the detective was out of earshot. And he said, you'll never find her. She's too deep.
Yeah.
And that shifted.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
Well, wait, man, did that not just send a chill down your spine?
Actually, it did the opposite. It shifted everything for me. Because from that, I was terrified up until that moment. And at that moment, I got furious. And
Awesome. That's what you want.
I was like, you know what? We're bringing him down.
Yeah.
But I thought for a split second, it really threw me to the point of, oh God, I'm in the wrong place.
Right.
And I've got 200 people out there and I've told him the wrong thing. And he tied an anchor to her foot and threw her in the ocean.
Yeah, right.
That's all I could think
Right.
was that, oh God, I've really messed this up. And then I realized it just was a fraction of a second. And then I realized he's just screwing with your head.
Right.
Just don't even go
He's
there.
more afraid of you than you are of him.
Yeah. And I could literally feel his heart beating out of his chest.
Wow.
I don't know if it's him or me or both of us.
Right.
But I think both of us.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
But I could literally feel his heart just beating out of his chest.
Wow.
But I almost had to testify because he said that.
Because he compromised. Yeah.
Yeah.
But thank God they ended up not putting you in a position
stand.
of, yeah.
Yeah. They debated it, but you'll never find her. She's too deep. So how that played out was that she was 30 feet down in a ravine.
Right.
So she was, and the only reason we found her was because her best friend was with the search party and they were driving along in the van and she saw her sandal at the top of the road.
Wow.
So as she saw the sandal, obviously they got out and they started looking around and they found goat bones.
Yep. I found those.
And then of course somebody climbed down there and they found her.
Wow. That's so fascinating. I wonder if there was a plethora of goats in California at one point, because as you know, I wouldn't have thought really to go on a foot search for someone until someone in my area went missing. And we have found more motherfucking goat bones than I'm like, what is this? And they're like, goat femur, put it down. Okay.
It's a pork chop.
Yeah, right. I can't believe the amount of goats that have expired.
Goat and deer bones and yeah.
And something you and Carrie Hewitt have taught me is that if someone wants to get involved in a search for someone who's missing and it's been a while and you don't know what you're looking for, bones do not look like, and I know this is a weird left turn on this conversation, but it's a piece of information that is important.
Yeah.
Bones don't look like a white tooth that they've got on CSI Miami and threw in the grass.
That's right.
They, as you have pointed out, can even resemble a stick.
Yep.
Human bones don't. I guess animal bones dry a little more white or pale, and human bones tend to be more brown. Yeah, I find that fascinating.
They're really hard to see. They're actually really difficult to spot. I usually tell people not to look for the bones, but to look for clothing or.
That's something else you said. Yes. So a person who's missing in my area, we were told the clothing and the type of shoes.
Yeah.
Because you said shoes don't really disintegrate, especially a lot of dude shoes have rubber soles,
Yep.
so that's going to hang around for a while.
Yep.
That's a pretty interesting tip if you're looking for someone who's missing and it's been a while. Pretty fascinating what you find out you're looking for. You just assume it's like one large 6-foot body wearing clothing and the buttons are all buttoned and everything. It's like it's not a Halloween display. It's it's going to be different looking than you think. It's going to be not really looking like a person.
No. And
So
typically they're not. Yeah. Typically they're scattered.
Right.
Yeah. So it's
Here. This is a fun, ghoulish detail. Apparently, scavengers go for the innards, the entrails.
animals
Yeah, the animals go
and
for
skulls. They love skulls because they roll and they're playful. Seriously. Yeah, they
that.
do.
Go bowling.
They like them. They like skulls because
Oh
they roll.
gosh, that's great.
Yeah.
That's great.
I'm full of fun tips. But
Well, that explains why you hear so many of these cases where the skull is found so far away from the rest of the body.
Exactly.
because it rolls, and if it's not an animal, it's water or wind
Right.
or whatever will take the skull and it'll
Right.
roll.
Yeah.
But they'll go down streams. There's been times where they've found the skull like 2 miles downstream.
Wow.
Because it just tumbled in the water.
And some animal probably took it to the creek to wash it off and have a new bowling ball. I like this one. It's a size 8.
They
Size
like-
8 bowling.
yeah.
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 It's pretty interesting stuff for sure. So
And I've come a long way in 20 years from being terrified that I might actually stumble upon a body to having all of that kind of macabre knowledge.
Right.
Yeah.
yeah, you have to, I guess. You have to know what you're looking for, what it looks like. You
Yeah.
know, I was so excited when I found a goat bone. I'm like, here it is. And they're like, just
Yeah.
put it down. Oh, okay,
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah. They
Or
look
a
different.
jaw.
They definitely
Yeah,
look
they do.
different
They
than
really
animal
are.
bones.
Their animal bones are much whiter. I don't know what it is.
My-
They dry whiter.
Well, I worked with a cadaver dog handler for a long time in Georgia, and she actually carries around in her truck, she carries around a life-size skeleton, and she calls him Fred. And when she finds bones that she thinks might be human, she'll get Fred out of the truck, and then she'll compare, like an anatomy class.
Oh my gosh.
She'll compare to see if it looks like a human bone or not.
Wow.
Because it's embarrassing sending goat bones
Uh-huh.
to the lab,
Right.
you know.
Yeah, I guess it would be a waste of time. And I thought you were going to say she has the skeleton for the dog. Like, okay.
Well, she has a lot of, yeah.
Okay, here's what he looks like. Go find this guy. Holding up a full skeleton. Go find this guy. Holy cow. So
No, she does it to compare. So
that's pretty smart. That's
Yeah.
very smart, actually. Mm-hmm. So it was about 3 days that you were on the search before you found Sherry?
No, we found her that day. They
Wow.
found her that day.
Wow.
Yeah, that afternoon. It was a life changing. It was such a surreal sort of, even just being in the house with that creepy guy, and then I wasn't with the search party that found her because I kept praying not to find her.
You got your wish.
So I went off on this other search where they told me they were going to a different place, and so I wasn't actually with them when they found her.
Wow.
But they called me immediately and told me that they'd found her, and then the detective took me up the next day so I could see.
To where it was?
Mm-hmm.
Was it important for you to see where she was found?
It was for me because it gave me all the feedback that
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. So I don't know how much you want to explain, but when you had the dream, how did it play out? Did you see what happened, or did Sherry say, Pam, help me? Or
So in the dream, I was seeing it through her eyes. So in the dream, I was in the back seat of a car,
oh my God.
and there was this man driving, and then his mistress
Right.
in the front seat, and I'm arguing with this mistress. And in the dream, I realized that this is my husband, and he keeps turning around, glaring at me in the dream. But I don't recognize him. He's not my real life husband.
Right.
But in the dream, I know this is my husband. I know this is his girlfriend. And I realize as we're driving along that they're going to kill me.
my God.
And I look out the car window and I see, and it's the goofiest thing, but it's so profound. I see this angel flying outside the car, and she's motioning to me like Peter Pan, and like, come with me.
Come on out. Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm there. I'm out of here.
Wow.
So I flew out with her, and then I could look back and see the car.
Okay.
And then I got to look at the road, so where we were, what the road was. And
did you recognize it?
I did, only I AOL'd what the road was. So I, in my mind...
Now you're going to have to explain what AOL, because people think it's America Online, which
So
not happening.
AOL is when you get an impression, a psychic impression, and your logic mind jumps in and turns it into something else. So you think you recognize it, and your brain...
That's what it is, in your
transfers
mind.
it to something else.
Okay.
So I thought it was a different road. And we went and searched there first, and of course I realized this isn't the road.
But analytical overlay.
AOL stands for
AOL.
analytical overlay.
Okay.
Yeah. So it happens a lot. It happens to all of us.
Absolutely.
Where you get something that's right, but you turn it into something that's not right. So I could see the road, I could see the car, and then she flew off to heaven, which was a profound experience, because she felt this great sense of reverence, and she almost felt like, I don't know if I should be going here, if I deserve.
Wow.
She was having this inner battle, and I mean, I was feeling all of her emotions. It was really crazy. And
Wow.
I woke up and I recorded the dream because it was so profound. I was like, what was that?
When you say recorded it, did you write it down?
I wrote it down in
Okay.
in a notebook. And then it was about 3 days later. That's where you get the 3 days.
The 3 days. Okay.
3 days later, I was looking in the newspaper and saw a picture of the guy, the husband. And the headline was that his wife was missing, and him and his girlfriend, were the prime suspects.
Or the
persons of interest.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I just was freaked out beyond belief, because it was the first time I'd had a dream or some psychic information come in that I couldn't dismiss.
Okay.
I couldn't just go, that was a weird coincidence.
Yeah.
It was like, that is the guy from my dream.
Wow.
And there was just no mistake that I had dreamed about her death.
Wow. And it turns out you had gone to high school with her.
Mm-hmm.
Did you know when you were seeing through her eyes that you knew her?
No. Mm-mm.
That's even more fascinating to me.
Yeah.
It was almost like she chose you to
Maybe.
help her.
Yeah.
To help her.
Yeah.
Is what anyone can think what they want to think, but that's what I think. I think she knew there was an open conduit, and she plugged right into your dream state. So not every impression that comes to you in a dream.
Right.
It's in your waking hours and sometimes psychometry. I know that's not your favorite form of doing things.
I actually do love psychometry.
You do? Okay.
I complain about it because when I was working on Sensing Murder, they would make me do psychometry before they would give me a photo to work with.
And what you want is the photo, because that's a more clear. Okay. Mm-hmm. So they would give you something belonging to a victim and say,
describe the victim. You can have a picture of them after you describe them adequately.
Oh my gosh, that seems like
a test.
A terrible thing to do. No, it's a test, absolutely, but like a kind of a evil test. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, let's add pressure.
Right.
So,
and you're being filmed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would, more often than not, I would just do it, because
just to get the picture,
just to get through it.
It's really Pavlovian, isn't it? It's like ding, ding, ding. Yeah. Okay. If you, we'll give you a treat. If you hold this, shirt, and wow, that's.
So I would always start with the hair because I like hair.
Yeah.
So I would always just start with the color. I was like, if I could just get the hair, I can build on it from there. So I'd always just go for the hair, male or female, and then I'd figure out if it was a male or female, and then I would go for the hair.
No kidding. Even with hairstyles today where I don't know if people are male or female from the back. It's like, is that a dude or a chick? Or
Well, I would start with male or female first,
Okay.
typically. Just get a vibe for their energy.
Okay.
And then I would start with the hair.
Okay.
Is it blonde? Is it brown? What color is the hair? And then I would start building a profile.
Fascinating. That's fascinating. And I loved Sensing Murder because I know the things they would hand you and the other person. It wasn't like they were pitting you two against each other, but it was sort of like they wanted you two to come to the same conclusion. And both of you had such a high percentage of correct answers together. And I guess you had said they had tested many, many psychics, but you two had these, that had to be a lot of testing and a lot of stress and a lot of pressure. But you and Lori both made it look so seamless. It was like it was a very easy thing for you to do, and I know it's not.
It is not. Yeah.
I know it's not. One of my favorite stories is during one of the classes I've been taking with you. The family of a missing person said to you, now can you just give us like the street corner of where she is? And it's like, yeah, Main and First, go fuck yourself. It doesn't work like that. It's not like,
I get that a lot.
The address is
Yeah.
240 Main Street. You're going to find her. It's awesome. It's right. She's right there. So yeah, it's not how it works.
Right.
And one of the things I wanted to discuss, not only some of I know we'll only have time for some of highlights of the fascinating cases you have, but the difference between things like remote viewing and mediumship, which I didn't understand. I thought a psychic was a medium and a medium was a psychic, having no idea there was a difference. And then even channeling, because someone has mentioned to me psychics, mediums, and channels all together like in one sentence. And I'm like, wait a minute, that's three things.
Right.
Now, so remote viewers and every instance I'm going to give you is going to be from a film, because that's basically where I get all my information is from movies.
Okay.
Everyone else uses Google. I use movies.
All right.
So Ben Kingsley starred in a thriller where he was a remote viewer. And apparently, since they've been able to be cataloged, governments, agencies have used remote viewers for decades. Russia, United States, probably China, probably every country, Mongolia, every country we can think of. Togo, the island of Togo has remote viewers. And they are trained. It's a training that is complicated for me and different. I feel like it involves a lot of math, but which I'm really bad at. Yeah, it feels like it's a bunch of numbers and shit, and I'm like, I can't just get out of my head. I can't even take it. But so
it's
Ben
a step by
Kingsley-
step. It's a step by step process. There's stages, and each stage is designed to draw you deeper into contact with the target.
Okay.
So that makes designed
sense.
for people that don't have natural psychic or don't realize they have natural
I was going to say
psychic
they would have to
ability.
have some, right?
Of course they do. Everybody
Okay,
does.
all right.
But they don't realize they do.
Do they use the more logical side of their head as opposed? Okay.
And a lot of men are attracted to remote viewing because it
are.
gives them permission to be psychic.
Okay, that explains a lot right there.
Yeah. It's sort of a
That
step-by-step
explains.
procedure, and it makes
It gives them permission
sense.
to be what?
Psychic.
Oh.
Yeah.
To be more in touch with that part of their,
Because they don't call it psychic.
no,
so,
it's remote viewing.
So they don't have to be
It's like
embarrassed
being in the
about it.
military. It's all tough and manly. So, yeah, Pam and I have discussed this, that I feel everyone has psychic ability. You can call it your gut.
Yeah.
And it may not be a psychic ability that expands any further than your own being, or maybe a few people around you that you love, or your pets, or but everyone has had a tightening in their gut, like, hey, that guy is weird, or oh my God, I can't turn left because that's going to happen. I mean, everyone, or even as something as simple as, I haven't talked to my friend Mary in 10 years and the phone rings and it's Mary because I'm thinking about her.
Yeah.
I think we all have that.
Yeah.
So in this film, Ben Kingsley had migraines, which I know a lot of people who try to develop their psychic abilities or have psychic abilities and aren't aware end up with headaches, whether
migraines.
it's you're doubting your own self, but I thought it was so fascinating. He would just eat aspirin, just eat them like raw, just crunch them and eat them. And he was working for the government. So that's how they made it more manly, you know, because he's like trying to bring down other governments by spying mentally on. So there's remote viewing. So psychic ability, you feel like is a natural gift.
Yes.
Okay.
I think it's a human capacity.
Okay.
It's just like animals all have instincts. I think humans have the same instincts.
Exactly. So even though you are very open about your experiences doing this sort of work, I had never heard you say anything about it appearing in your life earlier than 1996 when it was almost like a giant nuclear bomb.
Right. Yeah.
But you related offhandedly a story about visiting Gettysburg, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you got like sick. Like
my poor parents. I didn't realize I was different than any other kid, you know, I mean.
That's actually great.
But I was really sensitive. So my whole life, my mom told me I was too sensitive. My whole life, I heard it. But we would go, my sister lived in Virginia, and so we would take a road trip every summer and go see my sister. And they thought it would be a great lesson. Learning and vacation time to go to some of these battlefields. And they would take me to these battlefields, and I would pass out. I would just I would start going, I don't feel good. And I actually remember doing it. Remember thinking, man, I don't feel good. And I'd start getting woozy headed, and over I'd go. I'd just pass out. And
because of the history and
it was just the energy was
of
too
all of that.
much.
Yeah.
And my mom thought that I was overly excitable, and that I was like, a battlefield. It's not Disneyland. It's a battlefield.
Right. Where many people have died.
Yeah. It's not like I'm super excited because I'm at Disneyland.
Right. Ride the Confederate soldier. Right?
And I never put that together until I started doing this work. I never figured out that that's what was going on was a kid.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So I was wondering if it's I'm glad that you put those two things together for me, that you didn't really understand what was happening when you were younger until you were older. Because I was going to say, when you were younger, were there any instances of like, I thought this and then it happened, or
yeah, definitely. Definitely. I think one of the ones that stands out in my mind was my sister. My sister brought her new boyfriend home. She's older than me. She was 7 years older. She brings this boyfriend home, and we all go out to dinner, and my parents really like him, and I'm thinking, I can't stand this guy, and I couldn't figure out why no one else saw through him, because I'm thinking, this dude's married or something. Like, I knew there was something wrong.
Wow.
And I just kept thinking, there's something wrong. Why can't anyone else see this guy's a con? I just saw him as a con. And,
wow.
And I mentioned it to my mom, and she just got mad at me for being rude.
Yeah, you're so judgmental.
Yeah, like, stop being so rude. What's wrong with you? And then it was probably a week later, my sister comes home from somewhere. She's in tears. And all I said was, he's married, huh? And she said, yeah.
Wow. Did anyone in the family say like...
No, then they pretended like I'd never said it.
That's the best thing. Just sweep it under the rug. Just forget it happened.
Pretend she's not a freak.
Right, exactly. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, we don't want her to be a freak. So we're going to pretend that's not happening.
I have been sensitive my whole life too, but my mom didn't. My mom was, I feel like, way more sensitive than me. And in fact, I know that to be true because lots of things happened that were unexplained. But I remember being 10 or 11, and I would run into her room at night and be like, I'm dying. Because we went to church, and I thought I was becoming an angel. I thought I was dying. And because I would be laying in my bed, but I was up floating around the ceiling looking at myself. And I was like, oh my God, I'm dying. I'm leaving my body. And I would run into her room and make her, I would say, please hold me until I'm one again.
Wow.
Till I'm back in my body.
Wow.
And I was 20. It was my first job out of college. I worked at Kenner Toys in the market research department. We did market research tape of little kids playing with Star Wars toys and modeling them. And I'm, working, and the phone rings, and my boss goes, your mom's on the phone. And I'm thinking it's, someone's bleeding. And she goes, Melissa, I just found out what was happening to you as a kid. And I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? She's like, you were astral projecting. I'm like, oh, now you tell me.
Yeah.
Right. Like 20 years later, I'm like, is that what I was doing? So that's what my mom thought I was doing. I have no idea what I was doing. All I know is it scared me so bad I didn't want to do it again.
Yeah.
But it happened quite often that I would, people would say, oh, did you ever go out the window? And I'm like, no, I didn't go out the fucking window. I hovered around my room. And that's all. I didn't want to even do that. Right. And then I would wake myself up to run in my mom's room and say, please put me back together.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's, I think, little kids, even not even little kids, tweens, you're more open.
Yes.
And I know everything happens the way it's supposed to. I'm going to just say, in hindsight, I wish your parents had been more, encouraging.
Well, they were super religious, so
There
they
you
were
go.
really
Yeah.
afraid of it. They just were really afraid of it.
Wow.
So they
instead
just,
of a gift,
yeah.
they thought it was
They
a
thought it
curse.
was a curse,
Yeah.
or they thought they recognized that something was going on, but they thought it was maybe coming from an evil source. Like
Right.
they just were so afraid of it.
It's amazing how religion can do that. Something that started off as what should be such a beautiful thing to help us get in touch with the God in ourselves, however we want to see that. So I know I have heard some recent stories about your parents who are a hoot. How, do they accept this now? How do they treat you now?
They do now. They've just come to this is what it is.
Just have to let it go.
This is just what it is.
Look, she's been on TV. We can't.
And I'm like, I'm
hide
not.
this.
If it was evil, I wouldn't be. I'd be the one out there with a knife. I wouldn't be the
Right.
one looking for missing
That's a
persons.
good point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If it was telling me to do bad things,
Right.
that'd be different than me going out and helping people who are in this situation.
Yeah, doing the complete opposite.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's something in them that understands the beauty of your gifts. That you know, yeah.
So they've come around. Yeah.
That's a good thing. So before we get to the story that I'm even more fascinated by is one of the people you worked with who turned out to be one of my favorite words you use is a creepster. I think I'm going to see if I can get that in the Urban Dictionary that you actually came up with creepster, because I've never heard anyone else say that. So mediumship, different from psychic abilities. And I had no idea till hearing you discuss it. So mediumship is actually hearing people who have passed on, or hearing or seeing, or
So there's a difference between reading something intuitively and asking the source directly. So
Okay.
asking a murdered person what happened to them, that's mediumship.
Okay.
And I don't typically do that. So I typically...
and I love the reason why.
Yeah, so you can see it on Sensing Murder. Lori Campbell, sorry.
Oh, Campbell.
Lori Campbell was...
A bunch of Loris.
she was
psychic.
a medium.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, and she was a medium, and so we did work differently.
Okay.
But for me, I have found... Well, I'll tell you why, because let's go back to Sherry.
Yeah.
Sherry, who we were just talking about
Right.
in the beginning of this interview, is that she came to me in mediumship, and she told me that her husband had not killed her.
Right.
So I went, that's it. I'll never believe another spirit again.
And I love your theory why. I wanted to get to the point that what you explained, which I'm like just dumbfounded, is that dead people lie. Mm-hmm. And I think, and you'll correct me if I'm wrong, that you think that once we pass over all of the slights or horror that has happened to us, we let that go. And sometimes we protect the person who may have sinned against us, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. I think she was trying to protect her children. I think she didn't want her children to be
Without a parent.
Mm-hmm. So she had some agenda, but she was definitely trying to protect him even after.
Wow. Because after when she's in a different plane she doesn't hold on to the anger or the hatred. It doesn't matter to her. The rest of us here on this plane are like, he needs to be brought to justice.
Right.
And,
Yeah.
and she's like, oh, my kids need a dad. No, he didn't do it.
Yeah.
I think it's fascinating that dead people lie.
Yeah. And there's
For the best reasons.
For the best
in
reasons.
In their spirity thoughts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's no way to verify who you're speaking to.
Oh, that's interesting.
Anybody could
That's
come to me and
interesting.
tell me they're Marilyn Monroe.
Of course.
How am I going to know?
Right.
And they could
Right.
feed
Except
me.
that it's like a fat guy with a beard.
Yeah. I mean, well, they could present any way they want to me, and I wouldn't know because I don't know her personally.
Right.
So I have no way to verify. So, and you see this a lot, and I'm a little skeptical because
Yeah, you really can't prove things.
you can't
can you?
prove you can't unless somebody you've got
Gives you
a
a piece of
family member sitting
information.
there with you who knows. But I mean, I see it all the time. There'll be like a high profile person, a case, and there'll be 60 mediums going, I'm talking to her. I'm like, really?
No me. No
60
me.
people?
No me.
I'm
Right.
sure? Are you sure?
Right. Uh-huh.
So I'm skeptical about that.
And please don't think I'm like putting mediums down because I know there are probably some very qualified, talented ones. But
Yeah.
the thing I think that most people have experience with is like a storefront medium, and every person I know who goes to a medium, they're like, oh, I was Cleopatra.
Yeah.
Was anyone an apple picker? Was anyone a peasant? Or was everyone...
Past life.
I was the king of Siam. No, you fucking weren't. You lived in a trench.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
it was like, it's so, and there's no way I can, prove that. With migraines, which I've had 2 people, and I didn't go to get readings. They just came up and told me. They were like, oh, in a past life, you were a Roman soldier and your helmet was too tight.
And
I'm like,
that's
well,
why
I
you
guess I
could-
should see my sergeant and get a better fitting fucking helmet in my next life.
And that's why you
Yeah,
have
that's why
migraines.
migraines. I was a Roman
Interesting.
soldier. My helmet was too tight. You would think I would let that go over the decades and the centuries, but apparently I held on to that. And another one told me that I was an ice skater in Russia and slipped on the ice and fell and hit my head. So that's why I have migraines.
Interesting.
Yeah. And you know what? I can't confirm or deny.
Yeah.
That could be.
Yeah.
Both of those things could be true. I have no way of knowing
Right.
if any of that is true.
Or it could just be that you were Curly Howard in another life and Mo just kept hitting you.
Hit me in the head with a bat. Yeah, it could be that. I don't
Yeah.
want to be Curly Howard. I don't want to be any of the Shemp. Is there one named Shemp?
Yeah, Shemp. Yeah.
Okay, I'll be Shemp.
But that is that's not a mediumship thing. That is a,
No, I know that's
a past
different.
life
But
thing.
yeah, it was in the and like I said, I didn't go to get a reading.
Right.
They both approached me.
I
to
love
give me-
that. Of course, I've always told my students, don't go talking to people in the grocery store and
Yeah.
reading their dead relatives.
Right.
It's not cool.
You know what? Your dad says, give me back my wrench. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
it's
like,
just-
it's an invasion of privacy, and it's nobody wants to be accosted in the grocery store.
very few people, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
That's one of the things I love about the classes you teach. You basically tell us to, shut the fuck up.
Yeah,
and
that's
keep
not
it to
cool.
ourselves.
Yeah.
If someone asks us, you make it known that we can give any information that we have, but don't go. Yeah. Don't go. Yeah. So, knowing that your sister's boyfriend was a creepster, another case that was so amazing to me was, and I was in the midst of taking one of your classes in 2010, and you put a picture of a woman up, and I think you said, dead or alive, and I, obviously have not honed my abilities, but certainly want to know.
Yes, you have.
Stop it. Any impressions or, that I get, I'm like, well, I wonder where that came from or what it means, or if I've gone into my AOL logical mind. But the only thing I saw when I saw this beautiful woman was a mariachi band and a sombrero. And I'm like, well, that's pretty fucking weird. Maybe she likes tacos. I don't know what that means. So quickly, you said, I didn't know this case was going to get that big. And by the time we looked at our answers, I think he was already the person of interest and maybe arrested. So I want to know how you came into the realm of Bruce Beresford Redman.
Yeah, yeah. It's a twisted, complicated story.
It's fascinating.
Yeah. So I had met. What's interesting about myself is that I read criminals. I've been reading criminals for years, but there are times where I encounter them in my day-to-day life,
Yeah.
and I don't notice at first.
Interesting.
But I was in a business relationship with him, and he was a producer.
Right.
And
Survivor, Pimp My
yes.
Ride, a huge amount of credits.
Yeah.
So did he find you? Is that what happened?
He found me, him and an agent, and he wanted to do a missing person show.
Okay.
And so we had had some meetings, and there was something about him that I didn't like. Personality-wise, I just had weird vibes from him. So I like everybody. I like everybody. So for me to be...
Until they give you a reason not to.
Yeah, and for me to be standoffish with him and really just always wanted to get away from him as soon as possible.
Wow.
Just didn't care for him. But I'm stuck in this contract with him of having to develop a show.
Wow.
And and I'll just never forget that we talked about how we would format the show. And we even talked about like what's a really good scenario, what's a really bad scenario as far as getting rid of a body. We talked about that.
Oh my gosh, I don't know this part. This is fascinating. Please tell me he said rolling them up in a carpet and putting them in the sewer. Please tell me he said that.
No, but
okay.
we had these discussions about... Because
do you think he was preparing, whether it's subconscious or conscious,
know.
like talking with you, like how could I do this and not have a psychic figure out?
I don't know. What's weird is he didn't like me either. Like you could tell maybe because I was a woman or I was a psych. I don't know. He was just as uncomfortable with me as I was of him. We just didn't hit it off very well, and
because you're the light and he's the dark.
yeah, we just didn't.
Yeah,
it was like magnets that repulsed.
Yeah.
But he we would talk about how we would format this show, and he kept saying, Locked Up Abroad. He loved the way Locked Up Abroad is done.
My God.
And that turns out to be the most ironic.
Pretty ironic.
The most ironic thing ever.
My God.
So he, for those people who don't know who he is, I actually got out of the contract with him, which is when I saw his ugly side, because I decided I wasn't going to do the show with him. And getting out of the contract turned into a legal battle, and I saw an ugly side of him.
Did he want you to continue, or he just wanted the show to go so he couldn't do it without you?
I don't know. He just didn't want to lose, I guess.
Okay.
I don't know. He scared me at that point. Not really scared me, but I could see the abusive aspect of his personality.
Wow.
And I went, eek.
Dodged a bullet there.
I was really glad to get away from him. And then went on with my life. And then I don't even know how many years later it was. I'll never forget, because I was doing something and the news was on in the background. And I heard, it was in the other room. And the news is on, and I hear his name, and he's got a hyphenated name. Mm-hmm. There's only one of a kind.
Right.
So I hear his name, and I stopped what I was doing and ran in there and went, what are they talking about? And he had killed his wife and taken her to Mexico and killed his wife. So...
pretty amazing is April of 2010.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently they had a pretty troubled relationship. They had these two kids, and Monica Burgos is how her family wants her to be known, not Monica Beresford Redman anymore, owned this restaurant in Venice that I've actually been to. Zabumba is a Brazilian restaurant. Yeah, and I had a friend who was Brazilian, and would take us there to go dancing. And I'm, the worst dancer. I can barely walk. So dancing really wasn't. But the food was good.
So maybe you weren't a Russian dancer.
I don't, ice skater. I was not a Russian ice skater, probably, or a Roman soldier. But I have no idea what I was or wasn't.
Yeah.
She can dance to the hip hop really well.
I actually can. I love old school hip hop. Yes, I think in another life I was Jay-Z.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure. So I've been to Zabumba. The food's delicious. And she apparently was a very successful entrepreneur. And here's her husband, who has a pretty good, resume as far as shows. But I think always wanting more, I think that's apparent in his behavior. He has appetites, big appetites. Always wanted more, including affairs with other associate producers, other people on different shows. Apparently, Monica had affairs too. I think they were both miserably unhappy. So it was Monica's birthday, and he takes her to the Moon Palace, which is apparently a lovely resort in Mexico. And they had the kids with them too. The kids are in the room.
A weird thing, this is just a side note, but it just stuck with me. I don't know why, but he dressed like a Slav when we were in our meetings. Like, he'd show up in a T-shirt and shorts, and everybody else is, if you've ever been in development meetings, people don't dress up in Hollywood in suits and stuff, but they at least wear pants, usually.
I think that should be the title of your book. At least wear pants, the Pam Coronado story.
So he would always come in shorts and in a T-shirt. And someone questioned him one time about, if he was dressing up for the occasion or, and he said, I'll never forget this. He said, I don't care about what I wear, but he said, I've never bought my own clothes my whole life, ever. And I just remember sitting there and staring at him and thinking, a man-child. He's a man-child.
So like his mommy bought his clothes and then his wife bought his clothes? So I think that probably might be the biggest clue that he had issues with women. I think he has issues with
obviously,
women.
Yeah, obviously.
No, besides killing them, I think he has. Okay. So Monica is found 2 days later, wrapped up in a towel or a rug or blanket, and put in the sewer, not far from
the sewer of the hotel they were staying
not
in.
far from the
Because
hotel.
he had no vehicle. He has no way to dump her body anywhere.
Right.
He's got to carry her. It was the worst plan, which makes me think it wasn't planned.
No, it sounds like they got in a fight. There apparently were two English tourists who were in a room next door and heard a couple fighting after midnight.
Yeah.
So there's some video. God bless technology. There is some video, but it's not real conclusive. There's video of him going up and down the back stairs of the room. They were on the second floor. There's video of him going out a back door to, carrying what could be laundry or a tiny, beautiful Brazilian woman. It's not, I hate that when it shows you almost what you need, but not all of it.
Yeah.
So he was a smart, slimy dude, and they arrested him, and they kept his passport.
Yeah.
And they couldn't really hold him until they did more testing, and things in Mexico, I guess, move like as slow as molasses.
Yeah.
So he couldn't fly home, but he walked across the border using just his driver's license, and then caught a train in San Diego and back to Los Angeles.
Yeah.
Where he stayed for 1.5 to 2 years before he was extradited.
Right.
So since then, they found out that there were minute amounts of blood in the room, not Monica's. So I believe they found out she was strangled.
Okay.
I'm guessing with someone being strangled, there doesn't have to be a whole lot of blood.
Right.
It may not be any blood.
None.
Yeah. So that was interesting that the blood didn't belong to her. There was almost every piece of evidence has been contaminated. So I think it's a double-edged sword. If you're going to kill someone, you might want to go to Mexico. If you're going to kill someone, you might not, because if you get caught, you're going to be in
prison in Mexico,
in a what looks like a place where you wouldn't want to keep chickens or pigs. At some point, he was given like a 12-year sentence, which is awful because he should be given a life sentence, and it's, when in Mexico, do as the Mexicans do. So, him being fascinated with Locked Up Abroad,
I know,
which
so
probably
ironic.
a lot of people don't know, but you
Right.
have the inside track on.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember I think it was 48 hours, gave him a camera
Yeah.
to document his experience in his Mexican prison.
Yes.
And it was pretty dismal.
Mm-hmm.
And yet every time he showed something horrible, like the bowls of like Oliver Twist gruel that they're given, you don't really get to bathe. They dump like a bucket of water. Everyone uses the same bucket of water.
Okay.
You're in a dorm situation. It looks like the worst idea of band camp you could ever imagine, where 1 million men are in one room sleeping in bunk beds, grown-ass men. And everyone else has conjugal visits. So all of these weird murderers and drug dealers are having sex with their wives, and Bruce killed his, so he can't. Bummer. So yeah, the fact that he was fascinated with Locked Up Abroad, and here he is. It's almost like he manifested his own destiny.
It's really bizarre.
It is.
And I just remember being so shocked when it was a couple things that went through my head. One was immediately he did it. Just from the knowledge of him. As soon as I saw the news story, I was like, I know he did it. I absolutely know he did it.
Yeah.
Didn't even doubt for a minute. And then, it's the shock of, God, that dude really was scary.
Yeah.
You know?
Once again, listening to your instincts, you were right. Even if it was a difficult legal battle to get the fuck away from him,
it was,
could have been a life-saving thing. You could have been on the set one day and he, you pissed him off, and then, right. And then you're wrapped up in a rug in the sewer. Yeah, I mean,
he did not like not getting his way. He didn't like not getting his way.
That's it. That I remember you saying. And that, I think, seems like, apparently Monica was a really strong, obviously, this woman who built this restaurant, from nothing. I love the fact that her sisters would not let it go. I mean, when you love someone and they disappear and then they show up and they're dead and not from natural causes.
Well, I think part of what really it upset me, and I'm not her family,
right.
But the fact that he came back to LA and was prancing around and really sort of in their face. It was, I wanted to strangle him. I mean, it was maddening. I wanted to go down there and strangle him because he was so just in their face, and it was just really wrong. It was kind of like Michael Daly in the first case, in Sherry's case that we were talking about. When I went to the house to meet him, accidentally meet him,
right?
There's 200 people out there looking for his wife. There's 200 people gathering every weekend, combing the woods, and he's going to the movies with his girlfriend. Could care less. And so Bruce had that same sort of cocky attitude. It's just become really recognizable to me, that arrogant, cocky attitude. That there's no remorse. There's no nothing.
For the most part, I mean, I know there are a lot of missing people, but for the most part, a lot of people who get dead may have lived a compromised life. There are also a large number of people that get dead that didn't, that someone, snapped, a la Bruce Beresford Redman or Michael Daly, or, and I know it's a TV show, but Lieutenant Kenda, the homicide hunter, says nobody gets to play God.
Right.
That's what he says that I really like. He has to find killers of people that maybe aren't, society's highest, standing members. But he said it doesn't matter. I mean, this guy, had a compromised life. Doesn't matter. Nobody gets to play God.
Yeah.
So that's what's so interesting to me in this work that you do, that is so needed. And I mean, it's, I don't want to say you're an angel on earth, but you're an angel on earth. So,
Oh, thank you.
so I know you've got some things coming up like the IRVA conference in June.
Yeah.
So, IRVA, right?
IRVA,
Yeah.
yeah.
So obviously you do still dabble in remote viewing.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
I do.
So, I'm just going to put you on the spot. Do you work for the government?
Not at
Are you spying on the Russians? Okay.
Yeah.
Can you tell me what's happening at Togo? What's happening on the island of Togo? So not at the, I know you have in the past worked for the government because I'm aware of that. And I think that's even more fascinating. I love that governments here and others are open to using people with natural gifts like that. I think that's fascinating. Fascinating.
Yeah.
Do you ever come up against people in, let's just call it the Bureau, who may not, cotton to what you're doing? Give you the side eye?
Yeah. The FBI is just like a large police department. So you're going to have agents that are open-minded. You're going to have agents that aren't.
Okay.
And you're going to have particular cities are more friendly than other cities.
Interesting.
It's sort of like LAPD's, what we know as an unfriendly. The sheriff's department's really friendly. In fact,
Interesting.
I know I've trained some sheriffs.
Wow.
In remote viewing. So
Wow.
it's all just depending on what department they're in.
Okay.
And a personal thing. But what is interesting is that I have never, in 20 whatever years, I have never run across a department that hasn't worked with a psychic in some form.
Oh, no, that's interesting to know. Because none
They
of them
just don't want to talk about it.
That's right. None of them will really, not none of them, a lot of them won't admit it.
Right.
Some
they
of
don't
them
want to
will.
talk about it.
Yeah.
Well, for two reasons. One, there's this thing we call the giggle factor that they just don't want to be laughed at by their colleagues.
Right.
But that's how they pass. I mean, that's how I've gotten a lot of cases. Is another detective gave that detective my number. So
Interesting. You're like
so they talk
secret,
about it.
Yeah, you're like a little secret that.
Yeah, they'll be like, you should call Pam.
Wow.
So that does happen, but I don't think people realize how prevalent it is. It's just that they don't want to talk about it, and then they don't want to give you credit. So
I'm sure that happens.
that happens a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't get any credit. So
Wow. And do you think it's because of their own egos, or do you think it's because of, as you say, the giggle factor, or
it's
maybe both?
And I think I've gone around circles with my former FBI friend, and it's not that he was embarrassed that he worked with me, but he just didn't want to be bombarded with unsolicited tips.
Okay.
So if he appeared to be a friendly, he would get bombarded with all these unsolicited phone calls and tips and stuff. And so
if you're known to work
that.
with psychics, then other people who may not be as, scrupulous as you
or trained will bombard them. Like, I've worked on some very high profile cases. I've worked on some cases nobody's ever heard of and never will.
Right.
I've worked on a lot of high profile cases. And in one in particular, they basically had a closet at this department. And it was full from the floor to the ceiling with unsolicited
Oh my God.
tips, just binder after binder after binder of unsolicited tips. So
Oh my God.
it's like trying to stop a tidal wave,
Right.
So they didn't want to be perceived as being psychic friendly because that is
Right.
what they would end up with.
Yeah, and you run out of storage space after a while.
and it's a drain on the system for them to have to deal with that
And to
stuff.
track down
To try to track it down, and most of the tips are not
focused.
they're not focused. That's a good word.
Yeah.
They're not detailed enough.
Yeah, because if I got to where I started doubting psychics, it's like, oh yeah, they're going to be found near the water, near some trees.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, can you narrow that down?
That's the biggest joke.
Uh-huh.
That is the biggest joke. A detective I worked with for lots of years, the first time I met her, she was a skeptic. And
Yeah?
she was like, let me guess. You said he's by the water. And when I said, well, actually, I didn't say he was by the water, she goes, oh.
Interesting.
Or let me see. You said you saw a path in the woods.
Yeah.
And I literally had a detective say, if one more psychic calls me and says they see a path in the wood, I'm going to strangle them. I'm going to go to their house and kill them.
And then they'll be
And then
investigated.
they'll be missing. So they really hate that. They really don't like that because it's not helpful.
No. And I love the way you train people and that, you're like, to me, I'm like, a tree's green as a brown trunk. I can't even imagine how many kind of trees there are, but you have us try to draw them and explain. And the more detail that you can give someone, the better the chances they're going to find who they're looking for.
Yeah.
It's the details that matter. And even the things you think aren't important can very much show up and be important.
Yeah, even the color of the soil or
the
surface of a road. People will describe a road and,
Like
they're shocked
concrete,
when I ask. Right. Yeah, they're shocked when I'm asking them what's the
what
surface
color?
look like. They're like,
Is it
what are you
black?
talking
Is
about?
it blacktop? Is it gravel? Is it it's gray cement?
Yeah.
Gray cement. Yeah.
How many lanes?
Right.
Yeah. How much traffic?
Are there double yellow lines? Is it a broken? Yeah. I mean, the details are, I know, I hate to say the devil is in the details, but the devil is in the details.
Yeah.
So
it makes a huge difference.
I can't thank you enough for being here. And I feel like I could talk to you forever, but we don't have enough space, megabytes for a 500-hour podcast. Plus, I'm guessing your family would miss you if I kept you trapped in my little room here for a long time. Wouldn't it be awful?
Boris
I kidnapped Boris would get no dinner. I've kidnapped a psychic and I've had her trapped in my house. And then you have to have psychics come looking for you. It would be awful. Yeah. I am so grateful that you were here. And thank you for sharing your just the tip of the iceberg of some of the stories you have, some of the cases you've worked on, some of the things that you teach us. And if you want to get a hold of Pam, take a class, get a reading. If there's someone that's missing and you need help finding them, www.pamcoronado.com. And I can guarantee you will have a wonderful experience no matter what it is you are going through now.
Thank you.
And more cowbell.
And remember, we do solicit tips. Bring them on. Send us an email to jttipsters@gmail.com.